affected will affect the parameters like size distribution, entrapment efficiency, drug loading and storage stability. So these are the parameters affected by a selection of either lipids or surfactants. So careful selection of excipients is required to get the optimum characteristics required for our application as well as route of administration. So what are the things needs to be considered during the selection of lipids? So structure and shape. So majorly this comes as physicochemical properties of the lipids. In the structure and shape, melting point of the lipid, crystallinity, purity, drug solubilizing affinity, velocity of lipid crystallization and lipid hydrophilicity. These are the important things need to be considered. So how these all will affect, we'll see. See, structure and shape and crystallinity. If the lipid used is highly crystalline with a high melting point, what happens is that generally the nanoparticles produced will be having higher size. And if any impurities are present, these may interfere and cause the precipitation during the process or increase the size. And the major property is drug solubilizing ability, which will decide the drug loading. So here the drug solubilizing ability means the ability of the lipid to hold the drug or to solubilize the given amount of the drug. So it is calculated as how much drug is present in 100 mg of lipid. That is called as percentage drug loading. So higher the loading, more amount of drug goes into the lipid and more dose can be delivered. And next, velocity of lipid crystallization and lipid hydrophilicity. As I already told, there are two methods to prepare these lipid particles in general. One is solvent based methods and another one is melt methods or thermal method. So in both of the things what happens is first lipid will be either dissolved or melted, then it is processed under mechanical stirring or high pressure homogenization, sonication, etc. And then solvent evaporation or cooling to room temperature will give you nanoparticles along with other unit operation. So this lipid crystallization. So what happens is the speed of the crystallization will decide the size. So this is one more important factor. And then hydrophilicity means as it is already lipid, but it should have some kind of hydrophilicity towards the means some attractive nature towards the water. Otherwise, it causes the precipitation. So these are major factors which will affect the selection of lipid. So one example we can see. Here you can see the picture where the three different types of lipids are used like GMS, SA and TLN. Okay, so glyceryl monostearate, stearic acid and trilaren. These are the three different lipids. So you can see the properties. The melting point is 58 to 59 for GMS, for stearic acid 69 to 72 and trilaren it is 45 to 47. So same thing whatever we discussed in the previous slide is correct. You can see the particles made up of TLN are very small compared to your GMS and stearic acid. So as the melting point increases, the particle size also increased. So these are the lowest melting point and lowest particle size, and next comes GMS and next stearic acid. So only the lipid composition changed and remaining factors kept constant. The concentration of lipid is 2.5, emulsifier is 5% and speed is 6500. So this is one example. And next coming to the selection of emulsifiers and co-emulsifiers. So as already we know, the role of this surfactant is to stabilize the system and control the particle size. So the parameters affected by the presence of these emulsions are size, PDI, particle size distribution, which is measured in terms of particle distribution index, stability, entrapment efficiency and release pattern. So we need to be very careful. And apart from this, some other things which we need to consider is whether the surfactant, whatever we are using, is regulatorily approved. Means you want to export the delivery systems or you want to bring that into marketing to the clinical application or used by the patient, you need a regulatory approval. Means in India like DCGA permission. If you want to export to the US, you need a US FDA permission like that. So the emulsifier whatever used should be approved by the regulators. And next, route of delivery. See, some emulsifiers cannot be used, especially parenteral route. Okay, and some are banned to be used in the ophthalmic preparation. So you need to check whether the surfactant selected is can be used in the final application. Means if it is for parental, you select only which are approved for parental use. And next, specific role. So charge, selectivity. Charge means I already told whether these excipients can impart any charge, whether it is positive or negative. And selectivity means these have any targeting ability or any affinity towards particular tissue, particular organ, particular receptor. All those things we need to see. One example is if you use Trinity, it has permeability towards BBB, blood-brain barrier permeation. So in that case, if you want to deliver to the brain, you go for a Trinity like that. And concentration limit. So how much concentrations can be used? You can not use beyond the limits accepted by the regulatory bodies. The next, type and nature of the emulsifier. Again, its solubility, physicochemical properties, and finally in vivo fate. So as all these can be administered to the patients, what happens after administering in the body is also important. Means it should not produce any toxic metabolites or any toxic end products. So what are the studies we need to do? So first we need to see drug solubility studies in the given surfactants. Why we need to perform drug solubility studies, we will see. What happens? We are adding the drug in the lipid phase and then dispersing that lipid phase into the organic phase. So if the drug is having more partition or more affinity towards the aqueous surfactant solution, then what happens is all the drug will leach into aqueous surfactant solution only. So there will be a decrease in drug loading and entrapment efficiency. So you need to perform drug solubility studies and see how much drug is going into surfactant. And next, size and size distribution. So you have to optimize the concentration, type of surfactants, and whether you have to go for a mixture of surfactants to get the required size. And at the same time, it should not affect the entrapment efficiency and drug loading. And finally, in vitro drug release. So sometimes what happens is if you use higher concentration of surfactants, you may get very beautiful particles with a very less size like 50 nanometers, 40 nanometers. But what happens in that case is these can give you a burst release. Why? Because high concentration of surfactants, once you put it to the dissolution media, will allow the drug to release very fast. And finally, zeta potential. As I told, the surfactants have any particular charge so that it is affecting the charge of the other excipients. And then stability. So how much stable the particles are once you use particular emulsifying agent. So these are the characterization. Means you need to determine for each and every type of surfactants and the concentrations, all these parameters, then based on the results, you have to select a suitable emulsifier. So one more example will be where influence of emulsifier concentration was studied and the particle size. So you can see on the x-axis the concentrations of surfactants. The surfactant used is here soy lecithin, so 125, and on y-axis mean particle size was this. It clearly indicates that the concentration is increased from 1 to 5%. There is a gradual decrease in the particle size from 890 to 141 nanometers. But as such, you cannot go beyond this. What happens is, especially with the lecithin, if you use beyond certain concentration, again there is a chance of increase in particle size. This is because lecithin itself amphiphilic in nature. So once it stabilizes the surface of the particles, the remaining amount will be in the water, so which has ability to form micelles. So because of the formation of micelles by excess lipid present, again there will be increase in size or increase in particle size distribution. So you need to be optimize this very carefully, should not use very less concentrations and should not use very high concentrations also. And one more problem with the high concentration of surfactant is, again, it may go beyond the regulatory limits, and the other one is it may affect the body function, or it may cause a release, burst release. Okay. So now we'll see drug selection, how a drug can be selected. So first thing we need to consider is physicochemical properties like solubility, dose, melting point, log P, stability. And next, PKPD, pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic actions like category of the drug and its ADME profile, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. And next, coming to the analytical, which is also very important. Why, I'll tell you. So you need to see methodology, suitability, availability of the method or availability of the instrument, LOD and LOQ. So we'll see one by one why we need these things. Solubility. So first you should know whether it is lipophilic or hydrophilic to select a proper method to load the drug into matrix. And then dose, as I already discussed, it is not suitable for high dose drugs, so the dose should be very less. And next, melting point. So the few process involves the melting of the drug. High melting drugs cannot be used here. And log P. So it involves the process of emulsification, means you have to disperse lipid phase into the aqueous phase. So you need to see the log P of the drug also. Sometimes what happens is high log P is there, it may not come out from the lipid matrix also. Means it not parties into the water environment. So stability of the drug, as it the process involves dissolving in organic solvents or sometimes heat based methods, so the drug should be stable at the particular conditions used. And next, category. So you need to see what is the category, whether it is anti-inflammatory, anti-rheumatic, anti-cancer. What is the category of the drug? Why? Because like simple fever, crocin, or paracetamol cannot be used, and it's a waste to prepare a nanoparticle. So if you see the category, means whether the drug can be used for a chronic condition or not. If it should be used for chronic condition, then you can go for a system which gives a controlled release to reduce the dosage frequency. But if it should be given compulsory for immediate release, okay, then it's what is the use of preparing a nanoparticle which gives a controlled release. See, like you have to give digoxins and all those things in a heart attack, sublingual tablet. Why? Because faster action is required. If you want to prepare that as a nanoparticle which gives after 24 hours the release, the patient will die only. So you need to see category. And next, what is the ADME profile? Means how, what is the absorption, bioavailability, whether it is metabolized by CYP enzymes or it is excreted in the urine. So whether it is deposited in the tissues or not, all these things need to be taken. And next, analytical method. Why I wrote analytical method? You may got that out. Okay, physical chemical properties and pharmacokinetic properties are okay, but what about analytical methods? So why I wrote this analytical methodology is, so as I already told here, the drug should have less dose, and the amount of the drug that can be incorporated is maximum 10 to 15 percentage. So if you can assume what amount of drug can be incorporated. In that case, if you want to perform assay and other activities in vitro release and all those things, sometimes what happens is because the drug is very less, you need a more sensitive method or more sensitive equipments like LCMS. So that only you need to see first whether HPLC method can be used or only LCMS methodology, whether it is available with us. So LOD and LVQ, limit of detection and limit of quantification. How much lower limit can we go? Why? Because resolution studies is okay, but for if bioanalytical department where you are giving to the rats, where you can with the hardly 0.5 ml of the blood and you have to estimate, in that case, if your analytical method is not suitable to estimate the drug, your all work will go waste. That's why you need to consider all these things before selecting a drug. Next, types of SLN or NLC. Based on the method of preparation, three types may be produced which will give you a different release profiles. So first one, you can see where the drug is uniformly distributed throughout the matrix. These are called as type 1, which gives a sustained and controlled a relatively long release. And the second case, it is called as bioactive enriched shell. So what happens is your drug is dispersed toward the edge of the material, means edge of the surface, towards the surface of the nanoparticle. So in this case, there are chances of burst release. Why? Because it is immediately at the top position drug. So once you introduce into the dissolution medium, directly the drug will come out. So this will give you a burst release. And third one is bioactive enriched core. Okay, this is bioactive enriched shell, means in this outer shell. It is core, means the drug is located only at the core and the surface is with the carrier matrix lipid. So it gives a very delayed release. Why? Because first the lipid matrix should undergo erosion, then only the core material will come into the picture. That's why it will give you a very delayed release. So which particle is formed, we cannot tell anything. It depends on the method used, and then we have to realize after performing the in vitro dissolution studies which your particle falls into which category, whether type 1, type 2 or type 3. And next, methods. So most of the times, except that solid lipid and liquid lipid difference, same methods can be used to prepare SL and NLC. So these are classified as high energy methods, low energy methods, and organic solvent based methods. So in the high energy, high pressure homogenization, ultrasonication, microwave assisted, and supercritical flow technique. In case of low energy, micro emulsion, double emulsion, phase inversion temperature, and membrane contractor. In case of organic solvent based, emulsification solvent evaporation, emulsification solvent diffusion, and solvent injection. So we'll see one by one. First, homogenization methodology, which is again divided into hot homogenization and cold homogenization. So the materials which are stable at high temperature, you can go for hot homogenization, but thermolabile materials which cannot withstand at high temperatures, you have to use cold homogenization, like some proteins and peptides and some other materials if you want to incorporate into nanoparticles, solid lipid nanoparticles. So the first thing in the hot homogenization is you have to prepare a lipid phase, which consists of lipids and the lipophilic drugs and lipophilic emulsifier, and then some aqueous phase. So aqueous phase contains high, if you want to incorporate hydrophilic drugs, it should be dissolved in water along with the surfactant solution. Okay, and then heat those separately to same temperature. What is the temperature? Is just 5 degrees centigrade above the melting point of the lipid whatever we are using. So based on the melting point, we have to use a 5 degrees centigrade higher than that. So heat both lipid and aqueous phase separately to the same temperature, then put this aqueous phase into the lipid phase, and then subject it to high pressure homogenization, which will give you a macro emulsion. Then sonicate it to convert it into a nano emulsion. So if you evaporate the solvents, this precipitates into nanoparticles. This is hot homogenization. So what is cold homogenization? So what we have to do is here, as I already told, this is a thermolabile material. Instead of heat or this thing, you have to cool it by putting it in the liquid nitrogen or dry ice, and then grind that material in a ball mill to make it a powder, that lipid phase, and that powder is dispersed in the hydrophilic portion or aqueous surfactant solution. Then it should be homogenized, and finally evaporation will give you the FOAT nanoparticles. Then okay, some may have doubt, so we require the sophisticated instruments like high pressure homogenizers and all those things, sonicators. So can't we do if we don't have this thing? So there is a method called as microemulsion method where there is no need of any hi-fi equipment. So simple mechanical stir is there, you can perform the experiment. So here what happens is you have to again take lipid phase and aqueous phase separately, mix both of them. So here you have to optimize the ratios of surfactants and lipids and aqueous phase in such a way that if you mix with a simple mechanical stir also, it gives you a micro emulsion. So how do you characterize that micro emulsion? By appearance, it will be either transparent or translucent. So once this micro emulsion is formed, disperse this micro emulsion into high volume of the aqueous solutions. Again, once this emulsion is formed, dilute this emulsion into large quantities of aqueous surfactant solutions, which is placed at 2 to 3 degrees centigrade, which will cause precipitation of the particles, fine precipitates, so nothing but nanoparticles. So you can prepare in your laboratory if you have only mechanical stirrer also. But only thing is you need a little higher concentration of surfactants to get the microemulsion, and you need to produce the microemulsion by conducting more heat and trial method and then dilute that. But the disadvantage with this system is you will get very dilute dispersion of the particles. Means approximately if you dilute it to 1 liter, you will have hardly 1 gram or something particles. So 1 gram in 100 ml, 1000 ml, you think of that. So very dilute. So evaporation, during the evaporation stage, you may have problem with these kind of things. Next, emulsion method. So simple same. First step is lipid phase. Next is dissolve. Lipid phase means lipid and emulsifier dissolved in organic solvent. Then aqueous phase, which is containing surfactant solution. So add these lipids to the aqueous phase, homogenize, which will give you hyaline water coarse emulsion. Sonicate this to get nano emulsion, and the solvent is evaporated under stirring to get the solid lipid nanoparticles. Next slide, method of selection. So we have seen different methods like high energy homogenization method, low energy microemulsion method, and another solvent emulsification method. So how to select a method, which method to go? First thing is availability, as I told already. So if you don't have access to high phi equipments like high pressure homogeneous sonications, then go for microemulsion method. So first you see the availability, feasibility, and then drug nature, whether it is lipophilic or hydrophilic, or thermostable or thermolabile. Then decide whether it is hot homogenization or cold homogenization. Or if it is hydrophilic, you have to go for a emulsification where double emulsion method can be used. And then batch size. So what is the batch size you want to prepare, and then scalability of that particular method. See, homogenization methods, organic solvent free, and large batches can be prepared, means scalability is there. But whereas solvent emulsification, preparing large batches is very difficult. Why? Because you need large quantities of organic solvents which is difficult to evaporate. So that's why, like, based on all these conditions, you have to select the method. These are some equipments which are used. I told the high pressure homogenization. This is Avestin B3. So where you can prepare 3 ml, around greater than or equals to 3 ml up to 10 ml. And this is like pilot plant batch where you can prepare 40 ml of the same high pressure homogenizer. This is what you call as it's production scale or something, 2 liters to 10 liters, and this is a very large one, when 50 liters per hour you can prepare. And as I told, one more method, hot melt extrusion combined with high pressure homogenization, where you can continuously produce. So here what happens is lipid material is melted and passed through the extruder, and in between aqueous phase is added. So again pre-emulsion is formed. This emulsion is subjected to high pressure homogenization where size is reduced, and cooling of this emulsion gives you solid lipid nanoparticles. So we'll see here like what are the Indian companies working on these kind of technologies. Not only solid lipid nanoparticles, anything nanoparticles, polymeric, micelles, liposomes, etc. So few companies like Lupin, Cipla, Sun Pharma, Venus Remedies, which are working on this nanotechnology. So these are some references where you can find more depth material. Thank you.